Hey guys, it's Jane. It is not Friday. I didn't manage to get to this on Friday. It's Saturday. And so I'm still going to do a Friday reads-ish, which in my world means just telling you about what I've been reading lately. So let's get into it. I haven't done as much reading this week as I have the last couple of weeks. The family's been back from holidays and it's been pretty full on, but I have read a few things, so let me tell you what they were. Firstly, I finished the Elizabeth Bonesteel that I was reading, Remnants of Trust. This is a not super groundbreaking, but still well done and engaging mill sci-fi space opera type story. The first one of these was called The Cold Between. The second one, Remnants of Trust. I think it's just as engaging as the first one. We get a bit more backstory about some of the characters. It is really well done. So if you're in the market for that sort of thing, I would encourage you to have a look at one of these books. The second thing that I finished is Cassandra Chaw's Food of the Gods. Now I paused them because the names of this is kind of confusing. My edition of it was called Food of the Gods. My understanding is it's also been published under the title Gods and Monsters. And this is not really a novel, but actually two novellas that were previously published separately that have been stitched together. So the first novella is Rupert Wong, Cannibal Chef, and the second one is Rupert Wong and the Ends of the Earth. So that's not at all confusing. I enjoyed this. I really like Rupert Wong as a character. I really like the world that is drawn in it. There's quite a lot of body horror going on. It's not worse than Cameron Hurley kind of levels of body horror, but it's probably equivalent to Cameron Hurley levels of body horror. So if that is too much for you, you probably don't want to read this. But if that's not a sticking point, this is really pacey and engaging, and the kind of conceptual world that it inhabits is a non-Western one, and it's done in a really interesting way. Rupert Wong is, as the title of the first novella suggests, a cannibal chef in Kuala Lumpur. He works for some ghouls, although they trade him out occasionally, but that's actually only his day job. His overarching allegiance is that he's a seneschal, kind of like a representative of the Chinese version of hell. And he has all sorts of contractual obligations to a whole bunch of different elements in the sort of supernatural realm that always seem to keep getting him in trouble. He does manage to slide out of the trouble by using his sort of wiles, but yeah, he keeps landing back in it, basically. It's actually makes more sense if you think of these as two separate stories than trying to think of it as a novel. The first story all goes on in Kuala Lumpur, and it's about a dragon king who comes to Rupert Wong wanting vengeance for his dead daughter. The second one is because of some dramas that have gone on, partially at any rate, as fallout from what happened in the first story. Rupert is traded to serve as a cannibal chef for these exiled Greek gods who are in England. So he gets sent on a plane to England, and bad things happen over there as well. The first novella was shorter, and I think it worked better than the second novella. I enjoyed the freshness of the world, and I think that it was written really well. I would be interested in reading more of what Cassandra Chaw writes, although maybe I'll see if I can find something which is slightly less horror kind of going on. After that, I read Raven Stratagem by Yoon Lee. I've kind of been putting it off because I wasn't really in the mood for something super challenging, and now I'm thinking maybe that was a mistake because I found this second volume much less challenging than the first one. It wasn't it's just what happened. The first one, you really need to get your brain in alignment to kind of hear what's going on, because there's such a steep learning curve to kind of get into the space of the story. I didn't find that at all with this second one, and I don't know if that's because this is intrinsically less challenging, or if it's just because I've now done the work and it kind of, I don't need to do the work a second time. I'm not really sure. This was a really satisfying story. However, it's quite different from the first one. The first one, for me, the crux of it was the psychological stuff that's going on between the dead general, who is stuck in the brain of the young captain, and the interaction between Cheris, the young captain, and Jadao, the general. Like, the psychological stuff between the two of them is the kind of heart of what that first story is about. And you get first person sort of stuff from both of their points of view in the first book. In the second one, it's all told externally to them. You don't get any of the internal stuff that's going on. It's all told from the points of view of characters around Cheris Jadao. For me, the second book is, the key to it is about politics. And there was obviously a lot of politics in the first book as well, but for me, that's the heart of this second book. Coming to learn about the Hexarchate and the different factions within the Hexarchate and their politics and what's informing their politics. That, for me, is the heart of this second book. I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I enjoyed it as much, although I think it was as good a book, but I'm not sure if I enjoyed it as much. I'm certainly looking forward to finding out what goes on after the end of the second, because we get to a really interesting thing that happens at the end of the second book. So, which I've made this video 3 times already, and I've worked out that everything I kind of say to explain plot-wise what's going on in the second book spoils something for the first book, and so I'm not going to do it. But yeah, it was certainly a good read, and I'm if you haven't read Ninefox Gambit, I really encourage you to have a look at it, because it's something, Yoon Lee is doing something really interesting in this space. So yeah, okay, so that's the last thing that I've finished. I am in the middle of the moment of reading N.D. Wilson's second Outlaws of Time book, which is called The Song of Glory and Ghost. This is a follow-up to his Outlaws of Time, the story of Sam Miracle from last year, which is the book that I nominated for BookTube SFF Awards Middle Grade Best Work last year. Of course, didn't get anywhere near the nomination. And that actually brings me to my final kind of point. I'm not going to tell you about this book because I'm only halfway through and it's actually a lot going on, and I'm not quite 100% sure where I am with it just yet. I will tell you about it later. But the thing that's made me think about is, to my mind, the nominations for middle grade, it was just a disaster last year. If the BookTube SFF Awards is going to persist with the middle grade section, if we're actually going to do that, we need to do something about raising the profile of middle grade literature so more people are reading it, more people are, having views about different books to nominate. If it's just going to be another slate of Rick Riordan's, then I think we should just pull the pin. So I am wondering if the thing to do is come up with a hashtag or something so that we can flag discussion of SFF middle grade, so that people can, if they are looking for recommendations, they can go ahead and search under the hashtag. That seems like a thing that people do. I haven't found anybody who's done this yet. It may be that I'm just not seeing the right people. So can anybody tell me, is there a hashtag for middle grade science fiction and fantasy? If not, we should make one so that we can find recommendations and we can raise the profile a little bit. I mean, as I said, as far as I can see, the only alternative to doing, actively promoting this, better alternatives in this space is just to cut the category altogether. That's obviously just my 5 cents worth. All the Rick Riordan fans in the world could probably disagree with me, but nevertheless. So that's what I'm up to. It looks like the clouds are coming over. It was nice and sunny an hour ago, but now it's looking quite sad. That's okay. Just a quiet day here. I hope you're all well. I'd love to hear what you guys are reading, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!